Well, this next guest is a special one. If you've heard his voice at Placerville Speedway over the Sprint Car Challenge Tour the last few years, you will recognize it. It's Gary Thomas, a fellow colleague and a person who I proudly call a friend. We're going to be talking about his start in publicity, his start in announcing, and as well as some great things as we just have a nice little chat about racing in general. That's coming up next on Dave's Home Supply, getting up to speed after these messages. Dave's Home Supply specializes in cabinets, flooring, and countertops. Visit their website at daveshomesupply.com to look at products, services, financing, and even a free estimate. Are you looking for bookkeeping, payroll, or income tax services? Then check out the folks at For You Simple Bookkeeping. They are a licensed tax preparer throughout the entire United States. For more information, click on the link in the description. This broadcast is brought to you by Meat Freaks Jerky Club. Get the best jerky the world has to offer straight to your door by visiting meatfreaksjerkyclub.com. Pick your box and plan, tell them where to ship, and receive and enjoy. Log on to meatfreaksjerky.com and use promo code SPEED. Well, we've talked to him a lot with Track Talk, but we're going to get to know the man, the myth, the legend, Gary Thomas, GT himself. Gary, great to have you on here again.
Thanks for having me on once again, Ben. It's been a fun year, and I always enjoy checking out the podcast and everything, so it's good to be back on once again.
I know. We got to work with each other a bit this year, which is always fun.
Mm-hmm. It's been a great year, I thought. I mean, it seems like it's gone by fast, and other times it seems like it's it's kind of dragging on, but we're really getting down to the nitty-gritty and some of the fun shows coming up.
Yeah, kind of the months of money for California, because we've got so much racing basically from, about Labor Day weekend on till November.
Yeah, it always seems like back in the day, at least when I was kind of growing up, some of the championship stuff would be settled by Labor Day, and the end of the season was all the good fun special events. Nowadays there's a few point races left to decide the champions, but nonetheless, it's when all the special shows come and the weather finally cools off, so it definitely makes it more enjoyable.
Yes, it is. I mean, school's back in session, college football's back, World Series is around the corner. It's got just like a little bit of a different, and as you said, the weather gets a little cooler, Halloween stuff's starting to get a little festive, but that doesn't mean we can't go racing.
Yeah. That's it. It's like I say, the weather cools down. It kind of brings the folks out, and it's throughout the years. It's always been, at least my most fun time of the year is always after Labor Day, once Gold Cup is done, all the way through the end of November.
Well, we've talked about a lot of different events and series and tracks with you, but we're going to talk about you individually and your story, and I guess your introduction to racing. Where would you pinpoint that event at?
Yeah, so my parents went to, races before I was born. So, they actually met at West Capitol Raceway way back in the day before I was even thought of. So, when I came along, I've been, I went to the first race at Calistoga when I was like 6 months old and been going ever since.
Okay. And then you stuck around, obviously. You went and traveled to races as a fan, and then one moment in time you decide you want to start to join the industry.
Yeah, so I was, just a fan my whole life, and we were traveling to races, and I, met a few people that said, hey, you got some good thoughts, Gary. Maybe you should start doing a little writing, and started doing a little blog on one of the websites, and started working with a couple different teams, and then caught on with, just people, I guess, liking what I was doing, and got hooked up with Troy Hennig and George Haig and a few guys, and they said, hey, Gary, why don't we get you up here in the announce booth? Which, for me, it's never something I thought of growing up because I was always shy and quiet. It's actually funny. I saw Jonathan Allard at the Gold Cup, and he was telling Nick Parker that, this is my first PR guy right here back in the day, and told him how I never would talk back then. So, me being an announcer now is something that, never would have thought would have came to fruition. But, basically right around 2005, I started doing all that, and it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, so 2005, that's when GT Promotions kind of started?
Around 2005, I think it was, and then I started doing the PR work for the Golden State Challenge Series the next year, and doing more stuff with Jonathan and the Zero team right around that same time. And then I, kind of got hooked up with a few different teams doing their PR work, and I still do some of that, not as much as I used to, but it's all fun.
Yeah, yeah. And then announcing, that started coming around about what time?
It was right around 2007, I think it was, where the first night I did the infield was at Chico during one of our 2-day shows. Troy got me down there, and I think we had heat race trophies to present, kind of like we do at the Bradway every year. But that was my first time doing it, and then a couple years after that is really kind of when I started doing more of the upstairs announcing. But I was kind of the infield guy there at Chico whenever Troy would need it.
Mm-hmm. And which is kind of crazy, because for me, I started as an announcer and then became a writer, but you took the opposite
That's
path,
funny.
which does, I mean, it all roads lead to Rome, right? So
yeah, and it's funny. It's like you meet the right people or different people down the road, and you get connected with them, and you never know where it's going to take you.
Well, and something that and I'm sure that you can agree with this is, you start out a certain way, but you don't stay that way, whether your style of announcing or writing, it's kind of a ever evolving organism, kind of.
Yeah, and it's so great with like Facebook memories popping up. Like I'll see some of the old stuff that I did, and I'll read it, and I'll think, man, that's terrible.
Sure. Oh, God,
but
yeah.
and you watch some of the old Grove Hill tapes from some of the announcers over the years, and I mean even guys like Troy and Bobby and guys like that. Where their career started to where they got as the years progressed, they just, you could hear that improvement. And I think it's the same with all announcers and all writers.
Yeah. Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't a world-class bodybuilder on his first
day.
No.
You got to keep working at it. That's for sure.
Yeah. I totally agree with you there. Cause I mean, there were several times I was listening to maybe like one of my, first couple years announcing, because back then, I know Grove Hill tapes, they had an input on the mixing board, but back then it was all ambient, and even like reading some of my first race reports that were even being published in newspapers, it's like, oh my, how did I not get fired? Like, so, because I mean, and this is a perfect question for you. The writing game has changed probably the most out of anything. It's so different now.
Yeah, now it's more, I mean, some of the stuff is just, the shorter it can be, probably the better, just with all the social media things. And, I mean, obviously back then there were deadlines to get the stories done right after the races, which I know some of the publications and websites still want that. But, it's funny how it really doesn't matter at the end of the day what time you get the story there, as long as it gets out. And of course, with being able to, upload to our own websites and stuff is just totally different than what it used to be 20 years ago.
Yeah, no, I remember like sometimes 2 a.m. and you're just like barely awake and hoping that spell check is not going to take a long time. And also back in the day too, like hoping that your computer doesn't crash and you have to write the story all over again. Thank God for cloud stuff now and everything, but yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy, and just hoping your internet didn't go down or whatever.
Sure. Back
in the day, and now at least some of that stuff is more reliable, so it's been a big help.
Sure, yeah, and yes, no doubt, and I think because I think our fans, and this isn't a swerve at them, so to speak, or a negative comment. I think it's just society as a whole. The amount of information that we can digest and read has changed a lot. I think even in the last 10 years, as technology improves, it's one of those things where if they can't read it within, or at least get the main facts in the first few paragraphs in the first 30 seconds, they're just gonna keep scrolling.
Yeah, I think we see that with some of the comments and messages that we get on Facebook. No offense to the fans or whatever, but
sure.
Sometimes if you have the last of questions, well, it's in the fourth paragraph if you read it. But,
yeah.
I know what it means. Like most of that stuff, even when it's up front, sometimes it gets missed. But, it's definitely an ever-changing landscape.
Yeah, yeah. And, because, like, when you and I first started writing in the late 2000s or so, it was you had to basically almost put together a novella, like a small book kind of deal. And people love that and everything. Now it's like, no, that's way too long. Bing, bang, boom. And it makes our jobs a little bit easier because, being a writer announcer, I mean, for you, how was that adjustment? Was that pretty difficult at the first part?
Yeah, I think it was different back then. Just I mean, obviously, there was anxiety going into it and trying to learn what to do and how to do it. But growing up at the racetrack, I had always heard people that I enjoyed listening to, so I kind of try to take some of the stuff they did across over the years. And I listened to advice from fans and fellow announcers, and there were several people that I can't even name all of them that helped me along the way, but. It's pretty amazing nowadays. I think we talked about with the live streaming. Back then, with no live streaming, it's like, man, I should have just been calm, cool, and collected because nobody was hearing us when when the race cars were when the race cars were on the track. So it was definitely a simpler time back then, I guess.
Yeah, no. I mean, you kind of could and let's just say, like, we're not talking about anything vulgar or anything like that, but you could mess up big time back in the day, and only maybe a couple hundred people would be listening, and maybe like 10 people would notice. But and when I say a big mess up, meaning like you forgot somebody's sponsor, or like you skipped a whole row on introductions or something. Stuff happens, right? Now it's like it feels like you're under a microscope all the time, which is good and bad, right?
Yeah, it definitely. I think it definitely keeps us on our toes more. I mean, I probably put a little more thought and I don't know, do a little more homework than maybe I did when I first started out, just because everybody's listening, and you see the comments on Facebook and different things about their preferences on announcers. And I think back in the day, you didn't really hear these guys that are on the national level. You didn't hear them 70 nights a year. You only heard them when they came to your home track. So it really is a different deal nowadays.
Well, and I think what's really cool too, like I'll sit and listen to a race and stuff, or I'll be driving down the road and listening to a race, and again, everyone's under the same microscope and working in the same parameters, and you listen, and it's like, oh man, that guy, that was not a correct fact. That was
right.
But not to be critical or be a jerk. It's like, hey, these guys are making as many mistakes as I am, kind of thing. So
exactly,
it makes you kind of not feel good and like, oh my gosh, this guy's a screw up, but like, wow, okay, this happens to everybody, kind of thing.
Yeah, nobody's perfect. That's definitely what the more and more you listen to different races across the country. So if I make a mistake or whatever, I just think, whatever. Nobody's perfect, and this is all about just having a good time, and people are there at the racetrack to enjoy themselves at the end of the day.
Well, and streaming has changed too, because back in the day, unless you were at a race, right, you never knew what really somebody's style was or anything like that. You just assumed, oh man, he's still got a job, he must be doing a good job. So
yeah, because you can only hear so much. Even back in the day, obviously the sound systems weren't even as nice as they are now. So half the time, everything was muffled. So now with everything being so clear, you're really, even at the racetrack, under more of a microscope.
Well, and what's really cool with you is you're a part of, with the PR that you do. There's also a marketing aspect to that, and that game has changed a little bit too. But you're in an area in which people absolutely love sprint car racing.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's definitely sprint car country, but I mean, I'm a fan of all the divisions, if it's modified or dwarf cars or stock cars. They all put on good shows in their own right, but I mean, obviously, I now going to sprint car races, so that's certainly my cup of tea. I like all kinds. I like non-wing midgets, but I'm a wing sprint car guy, because that's really what California, Northern California, has always been. It's always been wing sprint car country.
Mm-hmm. And then just, it seems like the amount of talent, and I mean, not to beat a dead horse, right? But like, just what we get to watch, I feel like on the West Coast is maybe not recognized a lot. Well, historically not recognized a lot. I think it's gaining a lot of traction now, but like, we're just so blessed every single week, no matter how many tracks are racing, is just the amount of wealth and talent that are out there on a weekend. Yeah,
we really are. I mean, obviously we see the results across the country and see how many drivers that started in California are having so much success back there. And I think it's still fun to watch some of these young kids grow up out here, because you know that, you know, somewhere down the line, they're going to be making some noise across the country without a doubt. And, you know, we're still hanging on to some of these good guys that are kind of in their primes, and some are going to be moving on, you know, in the next couple of years, but we keep getting that great crop out of the micros and the outlaw kart ranks. So we're definitely blessed down here on the West Coast.
Well, and also you look at the live streams, whether it's on Speed Sport, Flow, Dirt Vision, or any other places that offer, and you watch, and the fan support is there, which is great. You know, the stands are somewhat full, or really full, that's an awesome thing to see, because without the fans, this would be so hard.
Yeah, that's kind of what we've noticed so far this year, is that the bigger events have been just, smashing home runs pretty much all season long in California. But, that's definitely what's going to keep these tracks open. You know, live streaming is nice, and there's a benefit to it. But if you don't have those bodies in the seats at the grandstands, you know, buying a ticket, buying a beer or a soda or a hot dog, none of this stuff is going to be possible in the years to come. So, seeing the great crowd support that we see at the Outlaws is great. Now we'd hope that all those people come back to the local shows as well and show that support.
Well, and there's you hear the saying, there's nothing that beats like dirt in your beer, dirt in in your soda cup or anything like that. But I take it a step further. There's nothing like a fan getting up close and personal, meeting their favorite driver or drivers. I mean, that's just the awesome aspect of our sport, is how accessible these drivers are. You don't have to buy a pit pass, I guess, is the only thing that you could say would be like an extra backstage thing, but even after the races, anybody can just go, as long as the driver is in a position to where he's able to meet people. I mean, him or her, it's so wonderful, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's something I hope that never ever goes away.
Yeah, that's what's so great about our sport, is that accessibility. And if you stay home watching on live stream every single weekend, I think you kind of miss out on that. You kind of miss out on getting to know these kids that are growing up, like I say, had the opportunity to watch Carson Macedo, start out just running locally at Watsonville. And, now he's one of the best sprint car drivers on planet Earth, and there's other kids in California that are coming up that are going to be that way as well. So when they get to that point, it's like, I can really say, man, I remember knowing them when they were just starting out, and watching them when they were just starting out. And if you don't go to the track all the time, I think you kind of lose that connection. So that's what I enjoy the most, is seeing these new crop of drivers come up, every year.
Sure. Well, and kind of going back to you, we talked about you getting started announcing, and then the PR work and everything. And then for you were a major hand in when Golden State kind of went to King of the West with Dan Simpson. You were a major part. That was a big, I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, a big part in milestone in your career.
Yeah, I look back on that, and that's some of the most fun times, that I've had my entire life. And of course, there was times that were, kind of headaches. But you gotta take the good with the bad. But I started out with the Golden State Challenge Series with John and Robbie Pageant running it, and then Alan Pageant took it over for a year or two, and then I kind of transitioned over to Dan Simpson and King of the West and George Haig, and I pretty much ran the day-to-day operations down there in Rio Vista with George. And so we really got to do a lot. We did not just an internet show. We handled all the payout. We handled all the points tabulations and everything. So that was probably where I received the greatest education on, just what it takes to run a series, and the different personalities that you have to deal with and know how to deal with. Because, I know some of these promoters, it's almost a thankless job, but you can't just lash out at a team or a fan that, has something negative to say. You have to do it, in a politically correct way. And that's just, you learn that over the years, I think, for sure. But the King of the West days were a lot of fun with Dan Simpson and George. And, we were close with the race team, Dan, and several of those guys that I still know nowadays, those are basically lifelong friends.
Well, and then fast forward to 2017, and you have an incredible opportunity, similar to your time with KWS, which became the NARC 410 series. And up comes along is the Sprint Car Challenge Tour as well as Placerville Speedway for you.
Yeah, it's almost, that's funny how similar that first SCCT season was to the first King of the West season. Both series started out at Antioch Speedway. But there was a lot of buzz. We had just amazing support that first year, and we still, the car counts are still good. But that first year was pretty special. And then moving over to Placerville, the first couple of years, I was just a PR guy, where we had Brad Kennedy was still the announcer there. So I kind of took a little bit of a back seat when it came to announcing that year. I think I did maybe 15 shows as opposed to I was doing 30 or 35 a year. So, but it was a lot of fun. And Placerville Speedway is a great little track. I mean, the proximity to my house is great. Just being able to drive 35 minutes up the road is pretty awesome. I went down to Hanford last week. And I thought, man, I missed my 30-minute drive to Placerville. But no, that was a good season, and a lot of fun times.
Yeah, and the SCCT, you still get to go to some cool stuff, and then also you're able to be a race fan sometimes. We bumped into each other at Knoxville, and then you occasionally get out of the state a little bit.
Yeah, that's always a great thing to be able to do. Is I always kind of joke that I'm a race fan that just gets to talk about racing at the end of the day, and I'd love to get back up and go to that Dirt Cup swing one of these years, but we're always racing down here. I mean, that was always another fun, time of my life. My mom and I and a couple friends, we got to go up there 10 seasons in a row to the Dirt Cup and, hit all the races in between. And it's great to see that kind of getting back into, where it used to be, because I think that's an important part of our sport out here on the West Coast, as well as having everybody as healthy as possible.
And what are some events that are kind of on your bucket list that you'd like to go to, but just, I mean, obviously, being in PR and stuff and being dedicated to a track and series, it does kind of lock you down a little bit. But what are some events that you'd like to go to at some point in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably the same as most people. I'd love to get to Eldora for anything. If it's Kings Royal or Four Crown like they have this weekend, that would be great. I obviously want to go to Indiana Sprint Week, Indiana Midget Week. Had the opportunity to go to Houston 3 years ago for the USAC show, which was during the Gold Cup, which at that point I didn't have to work the Wednesday night show. So we were able to head back there, and I just had a blast. Would love to get back to Houston and see a wing sprint car race. But there's too many to count, I'd say, on my bucket list that I want to go to.
Sure. Yeah, no, definitely special. And I mean, and you're also involved in some other race. One of them that's coming up is Trophy Cup at Thunderbolt Raceway.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that again. It's, that's always kind of like our biggest multi-day show at the end of the year when it comes to wing sprint cars. And we talked earlier about the cooler weather. That's what I always enjoy. And I mean, there's been some warm Trophy Cups, but for the most part, late October, it starts to cool down. You put that hoodie on, and it's just a lot of people having a great time for a great cause.
Well, and yeah, speaking of warm ones, the only one I can really remember that stood out in that department was, 2015, I think. They had rained out the previous night. The Thursday, it was one of the first years.
Yeah.
They went from a 3-day wing show or 2-day wing show to a 3-day wing show, and Thursday rained out during qualifying, and they started at 11 a.m. and that was a long night. I think I got back to the hotel at like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I just put my head on the pillow, and I think I slept in my clothes.
Yeah, that was a hot one. I do remember there about main event time for that first program or heat race time. There was people passing out in the grandstands just because it was so darn hot and muggy and humid. But yeah, that's definitely a one. That's a Trophy Cup we won't forget with that monsoon.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think it had rained maybe even the night before a lot more, and then
it did.
Yeah, and there was talk about, we're just going to scrap Thursday and just do Friday. Well, obviously that didn't happen. I think they got through Group A qualifying of the two groups they had, and then they decided, okay, we're going to do this tomorrow. And I think they requalified everybody. So
yeah, that sounds right. But I do remember waking up that Thursday morning and just the water that was standing around the campground. I mean, people's awnings were broken because of how much rain had fallen. It was just, I mean, everywhere you stepped outside the motorhome, it was a puddle or a pond, and it was you got to hand it to Steve Faria and the track prep crew for getting that one in, because I thought there was no way.
I remember, gosh, I forgot I've been down there so much. I forgot which hotel we were staying at. It was over kind of by the Lowe's, but kind of by Apple Annie's. Then you cross over 99, and it was on the left, somewhere around there. But it was a drive, right? And I just remember the standing water. I thought I was like in Mississippi in hurricane season. Yeah, because I'm a Pacific Northwest guy. Used to storm drains and everything. Lots of storm drains, and there was not very many, and that definitely was apparent with just standing water in the street. So
yeah, but I hope we never have to deal with that again anywhere in California.
that was a one-time occurrence. So although you guys had a pretty wet and wild winter in spring,
yeah, very wet in winter, and we did lose some races earlier in the year, as you know, but. After that little spell, then we had some heat. We had a couple of weeks that were heated out for the first time that I can remember here. So it's been a wild year.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, anything that you wanted to add on, Gary, that I didn't ask you? I mean, this is a pleasant conversation. I feel like we could have a weekly podcast with each other talking about racing.
Just on racing over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything that you wanted to add that I didn't ask you?
I mean, I think everything you hit right there was pretty good. But like I say, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm just a race fan that gets to talk about racing. And, I always enjoyed getting up to your neck of the woods back in the day during, if it was the Swing to Dirt Cup or the, the NST races or the subsequent series after that. Man, I love going to Cottage Grove and Medford and some of those places up there. So one of these days, if we get some time off, I want to just come up there and sit in the grandstands again, because the West Coast, we truly are connected up and down the coast.
Sure. People that you want to thank that have made the things happen in your career. I know there's a lot of folks, but people that you want to thank that have managed to get you in the spots that you've been able to obtain.
Yeah, there's probably too many to count. All the promoters that have helped me along the way. I built some great relationships with all the promoters down here in California that I can, if they need an announcer, they can call me up, and it doesn't matter if it's a go-kart race or a stock car race. I'm willing to go help out. But on the announcing side, Troy Hennig and George Haig were probably two of the biggest advocates for me early in my career that kind of really helped mentor me and get me pointed in the right direction. All the people that have ran the series that I've worked with John Padgett, Robbie Padgett, they were both great to me, and Alan Padgett, Dan Simpson, we talked about him. He was a huge help in my career, giving me the opportunity to do what I did with the King of the West series back then. And then, John Prentice and Brent Kading, they were great to work with for the 3 or 4 years. And then of course now with, Scott Russell, Cammy Arnold at Placerville, and with the Sprint Car Challenge Tour, I've been blessed to work with some great promoters and some great fellow announcers, PR people, and it's been a fun ride, but it's not done yet.
Well, awesome. Well, looking forward to working with you in the future, and of course talking to you in the future, and it's always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me on, and you have a good day.
Well, that is going to do it for this interview. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure and hit the like and subscribe button on whatever platform you found this interview at. It really helps us grow the channel, and we greatly appreciate it. In the meantime, we'll be back with more content and interviews in the future. Be sure and have a great evening or a great rest of your day, whatever time you're listening.